Okay, let's try it again. I'm having trouble with my GovC view, and I'm trying to make my weekly video. I may have to go to Cheese. What happened is that with Linux Ubuntu, the software that comes with it does not work very well with my Logitech Webcam Pro 9000, which I got in 2011. GovC view was working pretty good, but I'd started noticing a lag between the video and the audio. So I removed my current GovC view and tried updating it, and that seemed to solve the problem. I just tried restarting my computer, but the problem I'm having right now is when I make a video, all of a sudden the camera just freezes on me. So I am hoping that this will work. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. Like if I move, it's like it freezes. So yeah, I'm a big do-it-yourself person, and I'm still learning the ins and outs of Linux Ubuntu. And I just gave myself a haircut and coloring. Let's see if I can do this without the camera freezing on me. Yeah, it seems like if I move, the camera freezes on me. Yeah, let's try that again. Yeah, I've been coloring my own hair since 2001, and I've been cutting my own hair since 2016, because Jesus told me to quit going to the beauticians. And I can understand why, because every time I went to a beautician, he would end up becoming a Jesuit beautician. The last beautician that one of the beauticians that I had, who was good, got switched out with his clone. Yeah, the Jesuits actually kidnapped him and cut off his arms. Yeah, I got a postcard from him, in fact, once, and he told me, it's really horrifying what the Jesuits will do to me and my men. So, yeah, but anyways, as you can see, I've gotten pretty good at coloring my own hair. And coloring's easy. I started off, my mother taught me how to color because she was a beautician. And it's really easy. You just apply the color. But now because I'm getting older, I'm using H Beautiful Hair Coloring. You just apply the color to your hair like in 1-inch strips. And I usually what I do is I get, I'll show you. My beautician stuff here. To create it, I get this. The H Beautiful 20 strength works really good. That's pretty much standard, and I combine that in this bottle where I put, I'll put 2 ounces of that in here, and I bought this at Sally Beauty. And then I already threw out my then I buy the Sally Beauty Age Beautiful Hair Coloring. And I usually my hair is naturally very dark, almost black brown, and it's getting a lot of gray. And as you can see, the coloring didn't quite take the gray out. So I think the problem is because I've been using medium ash blonde, because I like my hair to go a little bit lighter. So what I'll do is I'll put in 2 ounces of this, and this is the cream developer, and then 2 ounces of the hair coloring in this bottle. Then I shake it really good, and then you wear gloves. And for me, because I am a winter in coloring, I like to go with the ash tones for my hair. So, and I can tell that I'm going to have to probably go darker to cover the gray, because I'm using the blonde. It's not doing anything to the gray. So I think next time I buy hair coloring, I'm probably going to go for dark ash blonde or light ash brown, and that'll probably do a better job of covering the gray. But it's okay. I don't look too bad with a little bit of gray there. And then as far as, so what I do is, I'll shake this all up, then I'll apply it right along the edge, and get it and then I'll go in 1-inch strips going all the way around, including the back and underneath, and just get my whole hair covered. If you have long hair, then you need to put your hair up in clips too. But if it's short like this, you can usually just do it this way. And then I usually just let it sit there for a half an hour. And then I rinse it out and just use shampoo and cream rinse, which is designed for colored hair. And the brand that I've been liking to use is Pantene. So yeah, it works really good for me. So I've been coloring my own hair since 2001. I started off with L'Oreal, but L'Oreal doesn't work too good when your hair starts getting aged. So I go with Sally Beauty. As far as cutting my hair, I look good with a bob. This is a bob cut. And what I will do is I wet the hair, I part it down the middle, wet the hair down. What I usually do is you can use a spray bottle. I have a spray bottle like this. You can use a spray bottle. You said, why don't you just show us? It's kind of hard to film yourself when you do self-cut. So I'll just explain it. I've actually made videos about it, but I'm just going to explain it. Those of you who've been to the beautician, you've seen what they do to your hair. So the bob cut, I basically kind of taught myself how to do it with trial and error. Because I have to use a mirror to see the back. Let me get the mirror. If you're going to cut your own hair, you will definitely need a mirror like this. And so what I do is I part it down the middle, wet it down, and then I get beautician scissors. And it is important to use, they don't have to be expensive, but you do want to use beautician scissors, like these. These are beautician scissors. Yeah, I first started off with sewing scissors, and it looked like I cut my hair with sewing scissors, so you don't want to use sewing scissors. Beautician scissors, they don't have to, these are teepees. Like, they only cost like $10 at Sally Beauty. You can, in fact, I think you can get stuff like this at the grocery store now. So I wet it down, part it down the middle, and then I'll look at myself in the mirror, and I'll eyeball it, and I'll just kind of like go all the way around, eyeball it, and cut all the way around. I find for my hair, it looks good if it kind of like goes down like this. So I will eyeball it, cut it all the way around. But it needs to be wet. You say, why does it have to be wet? Because your hair, especially if you have wavy hair like I do, if you cut it dry, you're going to have a choppy looking cut down here. So you want to cut it wet. So then that's basically, and then what I do after that is I let it dry and I look at it. And then once I cut it wet, then I put the part over to the side, because I like to wear my hair parted on the side usually, and then I look in the mirror like this, looking in the mirror, and to see how it looks all the way around, and I will sometimes fine tune it dry, cutting, like, I'm getting really good at this using the mirror, and sometimes I'll have to go back and repart it in the middle and fix things. You say, why do you have to part it in the middle? Because if you don't, with the bob cut, it's going to look uneven. Like, even though you might wear your hair parted on the side, you want to part it down the middle when you're cutting it, because, at least that works for me, I found. Because if you cut it on the side, then the problem is, every time you part your hair on the side, the hairs are always a little different every time you do it. So, like, if you cut your hair on the side, then you're going to have stragglers going down really long on the other side that look really weird. So that's why I've learned to cut it in the middle. So you part it down the middle, and then you can wear it on the side. So often what will happen, part of it on the side, often what I notice will happen is that one side is longer than the other. You know, because when you eyeball it going all the way around, it doesn't, like, I actually look good with a little bit of a uneven look, but if it's too uneven, it looks really stupid. So what I'll do, and when that happens, is I'll part it down the middle again, and like this side was a little bit too long, so then you'll go in there and kind of make it so, and you can kind of like pull your pieces forward like this too, you know, to see how even they are. So yeah, that's how I cut my hair. Yeah. Yeah, you might say, wow, it looks really good for cutting it that way. It takes some practice. It takes some practice. I actually, I've learned how to layer too, but I'm not going to go there right now. Yeah, it's just, the point is, you might say, I did watch a bunch of beautician videos and everything, but it is important to cut it wet first time. Yeah, wet, because it just, if you don't, it looks really tacky. Cut it wet. You can fine tune it when it's dry. Now, here's where you got to be careful. When you're fine tuning it when it's dry, don't be too much. What I mean is, you got to remember, okay, that the first time you cut it, it was parted down the middle. So you got to make sure that you're maintaining the line correctly. Like, don't be so much of a perfectionist that you go in there and ruin what you did when it was parted down the middle. Anyways, as you can see, I remember when Jesus first told me to cut my own hair, I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? He said, you are not to go to a beautician anymore, Gail. And it was like, I almost thought he was like a little mean, like, come on, everybody's got to go to the beautician. What do you want me to do? Look really crappy? And but look at this. And let me tell you, when all this COVID stuff started happening, I cannot tell you how happy I was that I knew how to cut my own hair. And one good thing that I like, you might say, well, that looks like a beautician did it. Well, I've had 6 years of practice, so I'm getting almost to be like a beautician. I've actually figured out that a lot of the stuff they do makes total sense. You got to cut it wet the first time, because if not, it's going to look really choppy. That's why they cut it wet. And then you can fine tune it dry, but you need to be careful that you're maintaining the line that you can, that you did when you cut it wet. Yeah. And because especially if you've got wavy hair, and that you don't violate the line. So yeah, you might say, what kind of problems did you have when you first started? Oh, I mean, it was like really uneven, botchy, but I've gotten really good at this. You say, how do you get the back? You get a mirror and you look at it, like you see it. I can see the rear this way. You just get a mirror. And one thing that helps is don't be too much of a perfectionist, It's like, I mean, it doesn't have to be. Notice if I get to be too much of a perfectionist, I end up making it worse. So I figure as long as it looks presentable and cute, then I'm not going to stress out over it, right? See, that's cute enough for me. Yeah. This actually is a very good style on me. So, yeah, I'm a really big do-it-yourself person. Jesus actually forced me to be that way because the Jesuits target me so much. Like, if I was dependent on a beautician, I've had beauticians deliberately botch my hair, Jesuit beauticians. And it was very embarrassing. I actually do a better job than those Jesuit beauticians now. And now I figure, since I can know how to do it myself, it's true that I usually have to do more fine tuning because I'm not a beautician, but I still get, at least when like I could go out the door with this and I wouldn't feel mortified. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, this is actually kind of cute. So see that? Kind of cute. So I could go out the door with this and I wouldn't feel mortified. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to say, and then I sew my own walking outfits. Yeah, I like this because, like I even put clips up here so it'll stay on the bra and won't slide around. Yeah. Yeah, it's working out good. The other thing is I'm pretty much a do-it-yourself person as a writer too. And as most of you are aware, some of you are aware, Jesus communicated with me through Buddha, and he wants me to cancel Bible for Future Saints. So yeah, see what happened was my Gail shield was at 70% power. And we couldn't figure out why that was happening. And we discovered that Buddha showed up, and he said it's because Baphomet has got you obsessed with SJW labels. That he's really big into SJW labels, and it's weakening your Gail shield. In other words, I was allowing demonic influence into my life. And my Gail shield is an extension of Jesus, so it weakened the Gail shield, and we had to fix it. So I went to my website. Yeah, Buddha said because you've been going to your website and putting all sorts of posts up there, and people have been going to your website and doing what it says, and categorizing themselves according to a sexual label, a SJW label, and Buddha said that is one of the big cancers in our species, our humanity, that we do that. And Jesus doesn't like it. He doesn't want us to just relegate ourselves to a label. So I went to my website, I fixed all the websites, I gave them humorous new titles like, Baphomet wants to let you know about your asexuality type. So you ought to check the titles out on my website, it's actually humorous. Just to let them know. And I put like an update to all the posts where I was talking about the sexuality labels, warning people that we got to stop categorizing ourselves according to the SJW labels because it's weakening my Gail shield. So I got that fixed, and then the shield only went up to 90%, and it stalled at 90%. So Brent was saying, I don't get what's happening, and I thought, I don't either. It turned out that Buddha showed up and said, I just came back from tea with Jesus. I actually have a post at my website about this. And he says, I was really surprised because Jesus has been wanting a lot of personal space to run the universe, because he's not going to be coming back here to earth anymore to deal directly with us humans. And Jesus said that he wanted me to stop Bible for Future Saints. And that was the reason my Gail shield was stalled at 90%. He said that Bible for Future Saints was like an updated Bible for Tribulation Saints. He said Bible for Tribulation Saints is finished, and I don't want you to work on it anymore. That where you stopped is where I wanted to stop, and that was about February 2020. And he said you learned a lot from the experience of looking at old records. And he said, then he told Buddha that he had another book project in mind, but I didn't have to do it, only if I wanted to do it. And he said it would be a collection of short stories about adventures you've had with your men, like the time when Brent Spiner's clone chased him around an ice cream truck, or the time when we had to use Bill Nye to help us when a Malaysian airliner got stuck inside a huge Jesuit's rectum, Yeah, and he just wants me to just write a collection of short stories based on my life. And he said he thought a good title for it would be Gail, the Complete Series. And I listened to Buddha and I thought, this sounds exciting. I was kind of reluctant, and he said it wants the focus to be around the adventures of me and my men. I was kind of reluctant to go in that direction because, well, because I wanted to have a record of everything that Jesus said to us before he left us for good. But Jesus apparently doesn't want the record to continue after February 2020. So I have created a book cover for it, and you can see it at my website. I've created a page. Just check the link underneath this video. And basically, I learned writing through the Institute of Children's Literature. My teacher was Jim Murphy, who is an award-winning children's writer. And basically, I was taught on the short story format. I find it interesting that Jesus said short stories, because short stories are usually considered fiction. But I've learned as a nonfiction writer that I can use a lot of novel writing techniques in setting up my short stories. So I've decided I'm going to do it, but I think it's going to be a lifetime project. Buddha said it's very important that you keep your Zen, and he says that means keep your balance pretty much, and don't wear yourself out doing this. In other words, I need to make sure that I do the Gail commandments. And so I have created the cover for it, and in fact, I might even put it on this video. And I started the first short story. I decided to start with 1989, when I watched the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Pen Pals, and decided to start writing Brent Spiner. And the technique that I'm going to be using is a technique from a book designed for intuitive writers by Lauren Sobola, where we get in the zone and delve deep into our right brain and our subconscious to write the stories. Because I'm a very intuitive writer, and outlining doesn't always work for me. The story comes to me in images that usually come from my deep subconscious. And the technique that she recommends for intuitive writers like myself is to listen to some music, to create a music playlist for each character in your story. Listen to the music and just let your mind and emotions float. And she said it's very important to approach your writing session with an attitude of gratitude. I think she may be a bit of a Buddhist because she recommends a lot of stuff that Buddha recommends, just to live a healthy life. And she says start off with a feeling of gratitude for your life. She says get present, like don't become too obsessed with, and just think about the character and whatever floats up to the surface in your heart and mind as you're listening to a music. She said choose a music playlist for your character that brings up deep feelings when you think about this character. So that is what I've done. I've created a playlist, one for myself, one for Brent Spiner, one for Jesus, and one for the men in general. With 2 songs at the beginning that kind of make me think of Vladimir Putin, one that makes me think of Matthew McConaughey, and the rest kind of just make me think of my men. And that's also at this page underneath this video. So I am going to, I've already started on the first short story, which I call Pen Pals. And I am, as I get into the zone, listening to the playlist that I created for myself, I realized that this short story is kind of like the Save the Cat institutionalized category. It's a story about me caught up in the strictures of evangelical Christianity, a very strict version of it. And it was not allowing me to flower as an individual. So that I ended up marrying somebody who was not compatible with who I am and who didn't really like me. So I am going to be exploring that in the first short story, and exploring why it was when I watched Pen Pals I decided to start writing Brent Spiner. the first time I ever wrote a Hollywood person, or even became obsessed with one. I like what I've done thus far. I feel like I'm coming out with something very truthful. Jesus said the purpose for the short stories is so that people will read my stories and learn the lessons that I and my men have learned. And he wants to leave that as a record for future generations. So I'm doing this as a labor of love for Jesus. And I can tell Satan doesn't like it. I really had a time getting this gutsy view to work today, and yeah, I can tell he doesn't like this. For the next one, it's amazing what I'm finding going into the zone. The reason I like going into my subconscious and listening to the music and letting the images float up is because that's where somebody like me, who's a very intuitive writer, will come up with the most truthful stories. And I do have an emotional IQ that's 9,999. And to fully access that, I do need to go into my subconscious. And this is how how an intuitive writer creates powerful stories, life-changing stories. Lauren warns, though, that you're going to be dragging stuff up that could be very painful for you to deal with. And I did have to take several breaks in the writing of this first short story. And she said, if that happens, just take a break and maybe meditate, and just get into a meditation mode. Just go into meditation, and that's what I do. And she said, if you need to take a break, just stop your writing and go take a break. Meditate, calm down, and make sure you take care of yourself. And then you can come back to it later. So that is the techniques that I'm using to write the short stories. Yeah. So I'm a pretty deep, sensitive, intuitive person. And so is Brent, by the way. And to tell our stories, we need to go there. So that's what I'm doing. So this is my weekly video. I have decided I am going to take on this project. It's going to be a lot of work, a lot of time. But it's my labor of love for Jesus, because he loves the human race very deeply. And I want to help him to I am to be the example, apparently. I and my men are examples that Jesus wants future generations to learn from our life stories. So I'm going to make sure that I capture them accurately. In order to capture them, I really need to do a lot of interior work on myself, and it needs to come out what I learn about what we were experiencing on the inside as we went through our trials is something that I want to make sure I bring into each short story. Because what better way to learn the lessons that we learned? And as I think about what Jesus suggested, this is actually very brilliant. Yeah. Because if I do my job right as a writer, when people read these stories, they will come away changed. And that's what a good writer is supposed to do. They're going to read it, and something in there is going to resonate with them. They're going to identify with what I and my men have been through, and hopefully, consciously or subconsciously, pick up on some of the lessons that we've learned. So, yeah. So that's what I'm working on right now. I kind of use my own method. I have actually studied quite a bit of writing craft. I'm pretty much self-taught writer. I bought hundreds of books on the writing craft and read them, highlighted them. There are basically, when you're writing like narrative nonfiction or fiction, there are basically two types of writers out there. There's the one who's got to outline everything first and then go in there and write the story, beginning, middle, and end according to the outline. And then there's the writer who kind of writes by the seat of their pants. That's me, an intuitive writer, where the story comes to them in images and feelings that kind of pop up, and it only happens when they start writing. Okay, like sometimes we have to explore the character during the writing process, and yeah, that's the kind of writer I am. Now, what usually works for me is the images float up, and then I'm able to tell what kind of story this is. The Save the Cat categories are kind of useful for me. That's like what kind of story it is, whether it's institutionalized, buddy love. Buddy love is like love stories, friendship stories. Institutionalized is a study of groups, where the groups have problems and they usually stifle the individuality of the main character, and the main character has to find how to deal with that. There's all sorts of different types of stories. And so what I'll do is I'll let the images float up, then I'll go look at my Save the Cat book and try to figure out what kind of a story this is. And then I can kind of piece together in my mind like a general beginning, middle, and end that the story will need. But I cannot, being the intuitive writer that I am, I cannot lavishly stick to my outline. Sometimes it'll go in a completely different direction. And I'm going to give myself the flexibility to do that. Because if I try to stick to an outline, at this stage as a writer, it just doesn't work for me. Now, once I figure out what kind of a story it is, then I should stick to my outline. And once I figure out what is the handle on the characters, then I want to stick to my outline so that I basically focus on the theme and don't bring in extraneous stuff that isn't related to the theme, okay? But while I'm brainstorming to figure out what kind of story this is, what the character is about, outlining just needs to go out the window, because that's how I work. Now, with my first short story, I've brainstormed to the point now where I pretty much know what kind of story this is, what the handles are on the characters, and I'm starting to form an outline. That's when I went to Save the Cat and decided it was institutionalized. I've already figured out that the next short story is going to be 1990, when Brent Spiner inspired the people at Star Trek to create the episode The Drumhead for me. And I will be going into why and how that episode came about, and why Brent cared enough to do that. So, and that story appears to be rites of passage. So, anyways, I am working on the book. I think this is going to be a lifetime project. Writing is a lot of work. I remember my writing teacher told me when I studied with him at the Institute of Children's Literature. He said, writing is the hardest job I've ever had. And he said, I've done all sorts of things. I've been a mechanic. I've worked all sorts of jobs. But writing is the most demanding, difficult job I've ever had. It's a lot of work when it's done right. But he said, the good news is when you do get the writing right, it's also one of the most rewarding jobs that I've ever had. So, yeah. I'm just glad that Jesus has got me at the point in my life, because of doing the Gail commandments and obeying Jesus, that I can do my dream job and really help Jesus out in the process and make him happy. Anyways, I pretty much am a self-taught writer, and I've found a writing process that works for me. It's my own unique style. I've just explained it to you. I think it's good that I didn't go to an MFA creative writing program. It probably would have ruined me. Yeah, I think it would have. Yeah, it would have ruined me. Kind of like cutting my own hair, making my own clothes, and doing my own thing. I do my best work when I just follow my own star. Yeah. My guess is, let me tell you, my writing teacher slavishly told us not to violate point of view, okay? What that means is when you're writing like a short story, you want your reader to perceive everything from the viewpoint of your character. Like, yeah, they taught me to do either first person or third person limited, which means, like, if I was describing, let's say the character was going through some tragedy, the character would say, and Theodore entered the room, and he saw a beautiful, gorgeous woman in front of him. His heart raced. And then somebody else entered the room, and he looked at them, and they appeared angry, and he backed off. Okay, now that's third person limited. Now, if we were writing this from God's eye view, which is our violating point of view, he would say, this would be how it would be written. Theodore entered the room and was feeling very threatened because he didn't know it, but there was somebody about to enter his room, and he just kind of sensed it, but he didn't really know it. See, that there, the point of view is the God above, who's kind of like panorama over everything. Now, they usually don't recommend that beginning writers do omniscient because it's very difficult to do omniscient well. That's the God's eye view. And that's actually true, especially if you're a beginning writer. But I have learned that I do my best writing in omniscient. The key, and this is something that I've learned on my own, okay? The key to writing omniscient well for me is to maintain a strong writer voice. So that basically that strong writer voice is like the point of view character. It's my own unique voice. And in order to make sure I do that, I need to be in the zone when I write. Yeah, that's why it's so important for me to listen to music and get in the zone. So that when I do the omniscient, God's eye point of view, it works because I have a consistent tone. Okay? That's just something I've learned on my own. Nobody taught it to me. I just learned it on my own through trial and error. My writing works best that way. So kind of like how I learned how to sew on my own. I never took a home ec class. My mother taught me something. So I took some lessons from people who had experience. Like my mother taught me how to sew. She taught me how to do my hair. And then with trial and error, I advanced to higher skills. It was sewing, with my hair, and now with my writing. So with writing, I started off with a professional writer who taught me how to do some basic stuff. Then I bought a bunch of writing books and kind of branched off from there and learned through trial and error. And now I've kind of like found my groove. And I've kind of explained it to you. What works for me may not work for another person. I am an intuitive writer. You got to be careful with the labels. But I am following Lauren Sopola's book, INFJ Writer. I am not an INFJ. I'm Gail, okay? But when I take the Myers-Briggs test, it comes out INFP. And I told Buddha that she really helps me as a writer. And he said, you seem to have found your balance with the labels, Gail. Buddha says, it sounds like reading this book is helping you as a writer. So basically, Buddha said the labels are... they're useful to generalize behaviors, to kind of like give you an idea generally what kind of a person you are, but you don't want to say that the label is you, okay? So I told Buddha, yeah, I understand. Jesus even warned me, he doesn't want me to see myself as an INFP. He said it would be a shame if everybody on earth was divided into 16 different categories. So Buddha said, yeah, it's just like a generalized way of looking at people, but understand that you are highly individualistic. But if reading her book will help you to find your writer style, and what's good about Lauren Sopola's book is she, even though she presents it from, she calls herself an INF, she has labeled herself as an INFJ. She does go into how INFPs and other intuitive types are, how they are similar to INFJs and how they can benefit from her teaching. And she does. She has helped me. She's helped me. She said intuitive writers get stuck when they try to stick to their outline and they don't allow inspiration to happen. And also, if they're plagued with a lot of self-doubt, that will affect their writing as well. So intuitive writers do best when they're happy, relaxed, and when they allow themselves to dream as they write. And yeah, and I explained to you how I did that. So yeah, as you can see, just by what I do is I read the writing instruction books, and then I come up with what works for me. Yeah. Yeah, and Lauren Sopolo also recommends that when you're in the dream zone as an intuitive writer, and you're trying, and the story's coming up, that you avoid all the writing craft books, and that you read out of your genre. In other words, because you're going to be influenced by what the other people are doing and comparing it with your writing and trying to write like them instead of honoring your own unique style. And I remember Jesus even told me that I have a tendency to do this. So she really understands us intuitive writers really well. And I remember back in 2014 when Jesus was giving me writing advice and I started doing that, he showed up and said, "Oh, I'm so upset. You're ruining your writing, Gail." He said, "You have your own unique style. Quit trying to imitate all these other writers." So anyways, I am going to go forward with Gail the Complete story, or I forget the title. It's at my website. Satan's messing with my mind, and I'm going to make sure it's thoroughly Gail, and that I use the techniques that work for me. Yep. So I predict that I may create a unique method of approaching nonfiction narrative. I might inspire other writers to do it like me if they're intuitive. So I think the result is going to be a book that will change people's lives. And that's what writing is supposed to do. So let me post my video for today.